Do you have examples of your work where you found that response to be quite easily forthcoming, where people tell you that this really has opened them up or has led them to, is raising questions for them? Like, are there a few, a couple of pieces that come to mind for you where you're getting that response pretty immediately?
Yes, there's a couple different. One actually was a piece that I created when you invited me to Washington earlier this year. I think I actually called the piece Flourish. I had this dream prior to making this work. I wanted something personal to bring, to speak about. I was out in the universe. This is my dream. I was standing out in the universe, completely unclothed, not in a graphic, sexual way, but just out there, just with my arms open. Really not knowing, just feeling very comfortable, trusting this bigger something. But underneath in the image, in the art, is this very angry wolf kind of coming up at my feet. I'm actually, standing on the snout of this wolf. And so there's a lot of tension in that image. You've got this figure that's unclothed, that's very vulnerable. And you also have this dark, it could be, it doesn't have to be dark, but you've got this ravaging wolf kind of leaping at the heels of a human being. And again, what I mentioned earlier, I think in life that's how many of us, if we're honest, that's who we are. There is this beauty and this openness and this trusting and this, hope in something bigger, but there's always this darkness underneath, right? And so you can't have one without the other. There's the both and. So I wanted to illustrate that in the work, which I'll share that image with you after we finish. But there were questions about it, at the event, and judgments, and this is what it means for me. And, ooh, that's a very evil looking image. And I'm like, okay, that's great. People see what they want to see, right? And that's part of the beauty of art too, is you can't force what I was hoping people to engage and witness on them. You have to let them bring their own narrative to it. That's why I love making art too, because it doesn't solve. I love that phrase, we see what we want to see in life, and wherever we are at that time is what we're looking for, right? If you're looking for beauty, you're going to see it. If you're looking for the other shoe to drop, it's going to happen, So how do we kind of exhale and just do the next thing on our list, if you will, and be okay with that? I don't know, I'm rambling now, but.
No, but I see what you mean. Yeah, no, it was a very striking piece, and I'm really glad that you brought that along, because it was, I think it was a great catalyst for a lot of reflection, a lot of discussion, and I recall, feeling that tension between a kind of yearning for the infinite and this sort of part of us that threatens to devour that. And so that was my kind of reaction to it, right? That we, on the one hand, are sort of really drawn to infinity, and on the other hand, there's sort of the wolf within that wants to devour everything. And you said there was another one that came to mind?
There is. I don't know if you've seen it. It's on my website. I'll share it. It's my personal trauma art that I created years ago, just around my own story. And I'll share the link with you. It's written about, and the visuals are there, and there's wolves in that one as well.
Right. Yeah, and that evoked a similar reaction from people.
Oh yeah, for sure. More so than the one that I just talked about. But the one that it's called "Preyed Upon Prey" is this image, and it's very large. It's 6 feet, 5 feet by 4 feet, and 38 inches deep. It was a big installation piece that I was moved to bring to life, but scared as hell to do. I had a client that was doing a dream journal. And she said, would you be interested in bringing one of your own dreams to life, for this cover of our inaugural journal? And I said, well, yeah, maybe, I might be. And when she invited me, the first thought was this nightmare I had as a child, come to mind, that I should bring to life in art. And I just pushed it down. I thought, no, I'm not going to do this. We continued our dialogue on email, and through some conversations with some friends of mine, here in Nashville, musician friends, artistic friends, I said, I'm thinking about this, but I'm scared to bring it to life and let people see it, and they said, well, you need to, you must, I showed them the sketches, they go, you got to do this, and so not only did I bring it to life, but I made it this huge, massive, installation piece in not knowing really, I was kind of pissy about it. And I thought, why am I doing this? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Like, no one cares. It's going to go on the cover of this journal and that'll be all fine. But it sat in my studio when I finished it. And after, I turned in the image for the journal, and I had a workshop attendee sign up and come to make her deposit. And actually, ironically, she's coming to my studio today again, this afternoon. But she came, her name is Kathy, but she came to my old studio with her deposit for the workshop. And just like many people that come in here, they get excited and they want to look around and go, oh my gosh, this is where the magic happens, and blah, blah, blah. And she saw that piece in the corner of my studio and she said, what is this? I go, well, that's my personal story. That's my trauma as a child. And she her hands kind of just went like this, and she started to cry, when she was looking at this piece. And it was at that moment, Brandon, that I realized the power of art. This was maybe 2014, 2013. So however many years ago. But I thought, what is happening? Like, she was literally in tears, And she said, this is my story. She says, I've never told anybody that what you made is my story. She handed her deposit over to me and she left the studio and she drove, away. And she texted me later and she said, I drove around for 3 hours after I left your studio crying in my car. And she said, that is my story. I've never told anybody that before. And I was like, whoa. And there was another moment where a client came to my studio, a mother with her teenage daughter who was recording a record in Nashville. And they came for a meeting to talk about the record packaging and, the art for the package. And they came in very excited to be in my studio and walk around, and they saw that piece the mother did. And she said, what is this? And I said, well, that's my personal story. And there was a chair, you can kind of see, I don't know if you see the chair, there's a chair it's that chair over there, but she kind of fell into it. And she said, that's my son's story. He was molested by his Cub Scout leader. And I was like, what? So, it just opened up, and it, I think, gave people permission. It was a visual, a piece of art that gave people permission to speak and to say for them what was true. And for them, it was probably decades of having not being able to have the words or the dialogue to speak, to push the words out. But anyway, that's the piece that I'm talking about that I'll share.
Yeah. No, that's really important, I think, because what's at stake there is perhaps not beauty, right? There's something else going on. And maybe there is a sense of beauty and a kind of aptness in the way in which what you created expresses an experience, right, that people can immediately connect with and resonate with. And, I don't know if beauty is the right word for that, but it seems, like a really important function of art to do that. And you've been doing some workshops around trauma, is that right? Could you say a little bit about that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's become one of my favorite things to do as a working artist is to facilitate and host and lead people back to themselves and help the light come back on in their eyes, as I like to say. But just using the tools, using the scissors and the glue and the paint and the paper to a means to an end. And there are different techniques that I use. I think obviously you've been in one of my workshops, but I let the art lead. I really am just the host or the facilitator. And I've become over the years trained and aware enough of the room to understand what might be happening for somebody or what might be opening up, and to just kind of let it take over. But it's been really, really powerful. Combat veterans, from Iraq and Afghanistan, emergency hospital care workers, nurses, doctors, ER doctors, and the general public, people in different vocations. But art is a tool. It's not the only tool, but I think it's a really powerful medium to help an individual say something visually that maybe they don't have the words to speak out. So I absolutely love it. I'm hoping it will open up more opportunities for me to lead around the country. But
yeah, could you say what people experience there at this workshop? Like, what is doing art, particularly like using the techniques that you're leading them through, or how does that help them process trauma, or what is the goal there? Or what have you seen happen?
Yeah, in the context of veterans, combat veterans, many of them have struggled for years mentally with their mental health. Maybe some of them have TBI brain injuries. there's a number of factors happening for veterans in particular, but art is perhaps talk therapy hasn't worked and other forms of therapy have not worked for them, but art and music are new scientifically proven methods to help an individual in ways that talk therapy or other forms of therapy can't. And so I've been fortunate to be invited into these nonprofits and groups of individuals who lead veterans through using the arts as a way to healing. The only way that veterans will trust me is if I'm honest about my own story, if I'm vulnerable about my own trauma. I'm not a veteran myself. I've never been to war. So the room changes when I get honest and I talk openly about my past. I can physically see the room change and the air let out of their lungs, and they feel safe in a way perhaps that they didn't before. Like they're kind of sizing me up. Like, what's this guy going to give us that we don't really know? But it's in that invitation and that gentle movement that I invite them to participate in certain exercises to, get them out of their head and close their eyes and come back here, and it's just incredible to watch what happens for them, individuals. And afterwards, many of them have sent me, they've got 3 or 4 pieces around here, but they'll send me pieces of art, kind of get emotional thinking about it, but they so grateful that somebody took the time to see them. They'll text me, they'll send me poems, and they're alive. Many of them are suicidal, had been, before. So that is what I love. It's like how I'm able to use the gift that I have, of art and making art, and not only solo in my studio, isolated down here, but taking it out, into groups and other people that can benefit them. And that's what I love, to help another.
Yeah. What is happening to them in that process, right? I mean, because I imagine a lot of people might be unfamiliar with the material or with the techniques, or maybe even, I think as I remember the first time playing with glue and when with these material, like feeling, oh no, I'm going to totally screw this up. It's going to be a big mess. Like, so how is that process healing? Like what happens in the course of them sort of giving themselves to that process?
Well, I think I've learned it has to be set up in a way that is disarming, right? Like there are many people who have had bad experiences as children with their art teachers or making art as children. And so going into a group of individuals, understanding that and actually giving them a place to voice that first changes the room. Also, mentioning to them that I'm not necessarily interested in what you make. I mean, I think it's important what the outcome of your art is, but it's not a piece that's going to be critiqued and judged on form and color and composition and all of that, in terms of the education aspect of art. But I'm more interested in what's happening for them as they're cutting and as they're making and as they're connecting to the image that they want to bring to life, or the thought that they have wrestled with, that they don't have words to articulate, but they want to bring it out in a visual form, So I'm there to help them as a guide bring this to life, And often those that are uneducated in art make the most incredible pieces of art that I've ever seen, as opposed to somebody who has an education and is academically trained in the arts or in any form. But there's an individual I've been reading a couple years ago, Melodoma Somé. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he is from Africa and does a lot of soul initiation work, and was academically trained in London, I think, in school, and would go back and visit his family in Africa. And they didn't. I mean, they kind of opposed the education aspect of things because it put walls around the soul, and the soul is very free. It's like a wild animal. You can hope to see it and you can hope to engage it and bump into it. But if you move too fast and too quick, you're going to scare it away. So, but anyway, I forget where I'm off on that. But art making and the not knowing is a gift in the context of a workshop, because the outcome is just incredible.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. What is perhaps some advice you might have for people who are struggling with appreciating art or making art? Are there any tips you might have, any advice you might have for how people could better engage with that?
Just do it. I mean, we can talk ourselves out of so many different things, Brandon, and you just have to put one foot in front of the other and move into the fear. They say your work, whatever you're afraid of, that's your work. So if you're afraid of making art, if you're afraid of speaking engagements, if you're afraid of going out and dating somebody, or, do it. Like, move into it and push into it. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be right. It's not the right word, but it may not be how you hope it will be. But the fact is, you're doing it. You're actually stepping into this energy and experimenting with that desire and that passion. There's a term in recovery that many people use, and it's act as if. You step into this, even though you don't know how to do it, but you act as if, and then the acting as if becomes a known way of being. And so I think that's true in art too. I'm not a trained visual mixed media artist. I've just kind of discovered and learned on my own. And in some ways, I think that is more attractive than being academically trained in visual form. And not always, but there is meaning in university training, don't get me wrong. But the not knowing for me is proven to be beneficial and work. So I don't,
Yeah. What's on the horizon for you? I mean, where are you seeing yourself in the next few years? Are there things that you're really drawn to, or what would be a beautiful way to live out your vocation as an artist in the next few years?
More workshop experiences. I mean, I think if I could find avenues and ways to plug in to different communities and different areas of teaching and facilitating, I mean, that is what feeds me, really. What feeds me and what keeps me going as a solo, isolated working artist. I love music. I always crank up music down here, and I'm listening to music and podcasts as I... Speaking of podcasts, I don't know. I mean, you're a big podcast guy, but my greatest discovery is a guy named Craig Ferguson. He's a comedian. I don't know if you know Craig Ferguson.
Sure. He had a big late night show, and
Joy. Are you familiar with it?
No. Wow.
It's fairly new. He's got maybe 7 episodes on it, but it's really just him sitting down with his friends, talking about what brings them joy, what in their life, keeps them going. And it's some of the most honest conversation, just sitting around one of his friends is a chef. So the chef friend makes a meal and they talk over this meal, and it's wow, hour and a half of conversation. But I'll listen to podcasts and music, but being in the context of groups of people, I'm a very social person. I love other humans, but that's what I hope happens more this year.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed your workshops. We had this retreat 2 months ago, maybe, and it was really a powerful experience, I think, for all of us to go through that workshop. And even in spite of I'm constantly feeling awkward around glue and scissors and cloth and collages and so on. But that wasn't, the point wasn't to make a masterpiece, right? I think I really appreciated the way in which we ended up developing these collaborative pieces and then discussing and interpreting them. And I think that was really quite an insightful experience for everybody. So you really are, I would say, masterful at facilitating that kind of process. And I suppose you never know what you're going to get, in a group of strangers coming together. And
it's a beautiful ending, though, isn't it? I mean, by collaborating on these pieces, and then in the rotating exercise, coming back to your home place where you started to look at the piece that other individuals have touched and put their take on, has proven to be a very powerful exercise for me to witness, but also for the people engaging. And it pushes a discomfort button in many people, which is what I'm after. People don't like to leave the work that they started, and give it over to somebody else. They have to give somebody else, hands to this. But that's part of the exercise, and that's what I think makes it beautiful, is this community aspect and respect. There was a lot of respect in the positioning of certain items in these art pieces, and perhaps the not knowing of why, an image or an object is placed where it is, but the respect for leaving it there because it worked and it came together, for a purpose and a reason. But and then in the end, having the dialogue with the group about where the individual started with the art piece and what their vision was and what other people brought to it. It all made sense. It all came together, and it happens that way every time. It's a powerful, experience.
Yeah. Beauty at Work is brought to you by Templeton Religion Trust. If you enjoyed this clip, go check out the full episode. And please take a moment to subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps get the word out about the show. Thanks, and see you next time.